Through brutal betrayal, rose an army, fighting for a world where no soul suffers in silence. From the group that brought you Desmond's Law, join us as we shield every paw from cruelty. Welcome to the Desmond's Army podcast, Animal Advocacy Unleashed. Through brutal betrayal, rose an army, fighting for a world where no soul suffers in silence. From the group that brought you Desmond's Law, join us as we shield every paw from cruelty. Welcome to the Desmond's Army podcast, Animal Advocacy Unleashed.
Okay, and we are recording. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of the Desmond's Army podcast. And if you would like to watch episode 1, there's a very easy way to do that. We're on multiple platforms. You can find us on Facebook at Desmond's Army, Instagram at Desmond's Army. We're on YouTube at Desmond's Podcast. And as of, I think, 48 to 72 hours ago, we just got on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Just search for Desmond's Army. So whether you want to watch our lovely faces visually or just listen to us in the car, there's many different ways that you can find our content. And joining me for this episode, we have a wonderful guest who we're going to introduce in just 1 minute. But obviously, we have the beauty, brains, and brawn of the Desmond's Army operation here with our president, Zilla Cannamela, and our Vice President, Linda Pleva. So, guys, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us for episode 2.
Good to see you too, Matt.
And I just want to let everybody know that as we're working out the kinks with these episodes, we're going to try and, set a format, make a little bit more robust as we go. So we want to connect with our audience. And one of the ways that we can do that is we set up an email specifically for podcast feedback. So if you go to desmondspodcast@gmail.com, you can contact us there. We're going to monitor that inbox. And we would love to know what you think about the show. If you have a question you'd like to ask us, if there's a topic you'd like us to talk about, a case you'd like us to talk about, we are all ears because we are building this ship as we're flying it, so to speak. So, and by the way, episode 1, if you want to watch that, it's available on all those platforms like we just mentioned. Now, in episode 1, we talked about the beginnings of Desmond's Army, how it was formed, Desmond's Law, how that came into existence, and a few other odds and ends. So it's a really compelling episode, a great conversation that I had with Zilla. And now we're into episode 2, and we have a fabulous guest. Are you guys excited?
I'm so excited. This is amazing.
So I don't want to waste too much more time. I want to get to the guest. I have a quick biographical intro that I'm going to read, but I wanted you guys to tell everybody who the guest is. So who are we going to be talking to here?
We are privileged to have Phil Arkow of the National Link Coalition, who educates on the connection between domestic violence, social violence, and animal cruelty.
Absolutely. So now let me introduce Phil, and I'll tell you a little bit about him. Zilla, as you said, he is a trailblazer in the fight against animal cruelty, and it's, of course, devastating ties to human violence. Phil Arkow has over 50 years in the animal welfare movement. Phil is a pioneering lecturer, an author, educator who first illuminated the link between animal abuse and domestic abuse. Phil is the coordinator, president, secretary of the National Link Coalition, the world's leading resource center on this topic. He champions awareness, policy reform, research, and programs that protect both vulnerable people and animals. Now, he's also co-founded organizations like the National Animal Control Association and state humane federations in Colorado and New Jersey. So Phil is a busy guy. We're lucky to have him on today, and he's delivered hundreds of global presentations, even as a professor. So that's a little bit about Phil. And let me now introduce him, bring him on. He's backstage. Phil,
Hi there.
I'm
And
glad it worked.
speaking of building the ship as we're sailing it, yeah, we've had some technological challenges today, but we'll make it work. Unfortunately, I have to be on my phone rather than a much bigger screen, but we'll make
Absolutely. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Zilla and Linda. I'll interject if I have any questions, but I'm just intrigued on this conversation. So we got questions for you, don't we?
So, Phil, could you just tell us, about the link to begin with? What exactly is the link?
the link in a short form. Unfortunately, it's so complex, there is no real elevator speech on this. But the simple version is that most people think of animal cruelty as an individual aberrant behavior, just one off, something that, kids do, or, something that's really cruel, which it is. But what we have found over the last 40 plus years is that it is linked with other crimes. That animal abuse rarely occurs in a vacuum, that whenever an animal control officer or law enforcement officer or humane officer, is investigating animal cruelty, very frequently they will see child abuse or domestic violence or elder abuse or some other community crimes. And in order to make more progress in protecting animal welfare, we can't just focus on the animal. I mean, that's a serious issue in itself. Absolutely. But legislators are much more inclined to take animal cruelty seriously when they see that it also hurts people, that when animals are abused, people are at risk. And when people are abused, animals are at risk. And that's the whole story behind Connecticut, which has 4 of the most pioneering pieces of legislation in the entire country addressing all this. Desmond's Army, one fourth of that, with what we call CASA for animals, advocates for animals in the courtroom, but also pet protection orders and domestic violence situations, and cross report between child protection and animal protection people, and defining animal abuse in the domestic violence situation as an act of violence as well as an act of animal cruelty. So when legislators start seeing animal abuse also hurts people, that animal abuse is linked with other crimes, they take notice.
For our viewers and listeners, what is the best way to request a pet protection order?
To have the domestic violence agencies lead the charge.
Okay.
We now have 42 states in which pets can be included in domestic violence protection orders. That started in Maine in 2006, spread to New York and Vermont 2007. I think Vermont and New York were also in 2006. Connecticut came on board in 2007. We now have, like I said, 42 states. We still have 8 states to go, mostly in the Midwest and the South. And the idea behind that is legislators pay more attention to the domestic violence issue, welfare, for one very simple reason. Animals don't vote. But when we show them how many of their constituents have pets, then they begin to take. Unfortunately, Connecticut and the Mid-Atlantic states have the lowest rates of pet ownership of any states in the country. Pet ownership tends to increase the further we go. We're not quite sure exactly why. There are a number of theories behind all that. But regardless, I don't have the numbers with me off the top of my head, but I think it was something like 28% of Connecticut homes have dogs and about 30% have cats, which is still a significant number.
They're all on my street.
Right.
Believe me.
With good animal control programs, they won't be wandering on the street. Okay. But that's another challenge that Connecticut has to many eastern states, in that animal control is all handled on the township. And you have 200 some odd distinct towns in Connecticut, each with their own separate program, even though they're all under the Department of Agriculture. I moved from New Jersey 5 years ago. We have 616 townships there.
Wow.
I mean, so there's one of the huge dilemmas in animal welfare. There is virtually no statewide coordination of any of these programs, which makes it extremely difficult to get programs.
Phil, how did you How did you get involved in this kind of work? I mean, were you just interested in it, or what's sort of the genesis of it for you?
I had a dog. Poodle named Palouse.
That'll do it.
I was a newspaper reporter. My first job was in Meriden, Connecticut. Then I went to Colorado Springs, Colorado. Then I went to Albany, New York. And after one winter in Albany, realized I'd made a big mistake and went back to Colorado Springs. And the newspaper I worked for wouldn't hire me back because I had left them. The other paper wouldn't hire me. Well, I was writing melodrama scripts and bussing tables in a melodrama theater and saw this strange ad in this archaic thing we used to call the one ads in a news for the local Humane Society to do their education publicity programs. And I thought I'd stay there till the next newspaper job came along, and I never really left. That was in 1973. And our shelter was, this was the Humane Society, the Pikes Peak region in Colorado Springs. Back then, we were taking 21,000 animals a year. That's 60 animals a day. And we were investigating 1,400 cruelty cases. And people in New England and smaller towns just can't grasp the scope of what a large city, full-scale animal shelter deals with on a daily basis. Anyway, about 10 years into that, I had three things occur to me that began to put the whole animal welfare question in a whole different light. One was a research article that crossed my desk from my alma mater, University of Pennsylvania. A woman in the School of Social Work took a year's worth of data from the Bucks County, Pennsylvania Department of Children and Families and the Bucks County SPCA and looked at all the caseloads and found that in 9% of the cases they left. Protection and animal were dealing with the same people, but they weren't talking to each other. They were inside. And I thought, what's wrong? Because the child protection field came out of animal protection back in 1874. And now 110 years later, they weren't talking to each other. I thought, what's wrong with that picture? At the same time, I was doing an in-service training for teachers in Colorado Springs. I was the only delegate from the humane movement within the American Veterinary Medical Association. I was on their animal welfare committee, and I saw 60,000 veterinarians who were having a very difficult time convincing the rest of the world that they were real doctors. And we're in this classroom at shelter, and I had a light bulb moment. I said, Doc, every teacher in this room is mandated by Colorado state law to report suspected child abuse. And I know everybody in the human healthcare field is mandated to report child abuse, but what about vets? You've got medical training. In fact, your work is more difficult than a physician because you got to treat multiple species and your patients can't tell you where it hurts. So do you have to report child abuse? As a matter of fact, I do. Colorado is the only state in the country in which veterinarians were specifically named as mandated reporters. And 49 states that occurred to them that vets might keep children. Colorado is also a very progressive state. In that case, the outlook you can see farther. But then I took it one step further. I said, okay, do you have to report animal cruelty to us at the Humane Society? He said, no, why would I do that? I might lose a client. And I thought, what's wrong with that picture? Shouldn't the veterinarian be as proactive in responding to animal abuse as a pediatrician is in responding to child abuse? By the way, 40 years later now, 43 states either require or permit veterinarians to report animal abuse because of this focus on the link. The third thing that happened was I was our after dinner speaker at our domestic violence shelter's annual meeting, and I was waiting to go on. I was looking at one newsletter, and there on one page of the newsletter were these 4 drawings that had been drawn by kids in the shelter that showed animals that had been killed or hurt by daddy or mommy's abusive boyfriend as a way to warn them that what he did to the cat, he could do to them. As keep them under control. It's what we now call coercive control. And I remember thinking at the time, boy, this is a whole aspect of animal abuse we never really thought about. Well, that got me thinking. I wasn't alone. There were a handful of us around the country. Back in 2008, 5 of us got together in a hotel room in Portland, Maine, and we created this National Link Coalition. And today we have 6,100 people on our mailing list, and we have a free monthly newsletter that goes out around the world to 75 countries. We're following 143 bills in state legislatures right now. We have over 2,500 citations of bibliography. We do over 100 trainings each year. I just got back from, I don't know when this will air, but just last week I got back from Hartford. I was speaking at the UConn Law School. Earlier this year, I was doing a program for Connecticut DCF, the Department of Agriculture, Connecticut Physicians Association, Connecticut Animal Control Conference. So, I mean, we do a lot of trainings to get people in various fields to realize that by working together, by pooling their limited resources, by focusing on humane and human services at the same time, we can do a much more effective job.
Wow, that's just so much. It's just so much. And yet here we sit, right, still needing more and more work.
Yeah.
Yeah, the key to it, and I tell this to animal all the time, you have to have,
I'm sorry.
you
You have
have
to have
patience,
patience.
not medical. Okay, time patience. You have to realize this, you're in for the long haul, that these changes do not occur overnight. There are a lot of systemic issues in every single profession that we have to work with. And it takes a long time to turn a ship around. So as long as you recognize that and realize you're going to take small incremental steps to make progress and realize you're not going to get it done overnight, we can all do much better.
And I think that's a lot of the frustration we see, especially lately within Connecticut. It seems we've taken a backward step, and the courts are not recognizing animal cruelty. They're not recognizing the link, and they're simply letting people off. They're letting people go. And they're not understanding that if you're harming an animal, what's next? The next is you're going to harm a person, or you're already harming children in the home, or a spouse or partner.
Having just come back from this UConn Animal Clinic conference, there was a lot of discussion about that. And let me put it in this context. I said earlier, you have to understand the different systems that different professions are working. Okay, within the legal profession, not even the legal profession, the jurisprudence profession within the court. Okay, not just in Connecticut, but all across the country, there is an enormous debate as to whether incarceration or remediation is the best approach. Does somebody improve by throwing them in prison? Are there alternative treatment programs? Connecticut has, what is it? ARI, Alternative Rehabilitation. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
AR.
Accelerated rehabilitation.
Accelerated rehabilitation. Thank you. Huge discussion about that. And it's, I don't have an opinion on it, and there's no real clear-cut answer. There are many, many times in many different cases, in many different crimes, where a prison may not be the best answer. You want to make a positive, you want to show somebody, show the world that you care about this, and that happens every now and then. I just got a story, it'll be in the January link letter, about a guy in Florida who was a sixth grade teacher in a school. He was using school Wi-Fi to create not only child pornography, but also animal pornography. That's people having sex with that. And was recruiting kids in the school for this. He got sentenced to 135 years in prison. Okay. With a no contact order. He's not allowed to have contact with dogs after he gets out of prison 135 years from now. Occasionally you get one really strong sentence in a particularly egregious case. But in many cases, prison may not necessarily be the answer. And God bless the judges who have to wade through all and make a determination in every case. And it's not that they don't care about animals, and it's not that they don't recognize the link, is that they have to deal with the fact prisons are overcrowded, particular details of any particular case, who the individual is, what the nature of the crime was. It's an imperfect system, I will grant you that. But if we were to throw everybody who committed any kind of crime into jail, we would have an awful lot of people in prison.
Right.
Well, Phil, let me
agree. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I do agree that not probably the majority of cases are not going to benefit by someone going to prison. However, we have this thing called accelerated rehabilitation here that allows a court to put someone in this program, and there really are no other requirements. There's no education that they're required to go through. There's no community service. There's no fines. There's really nothing. There's no probationary period. The only thing that they are asked to do is not be rearrested. And we in fact see many being rearrested, and there's no accountability for that either. So I think, in my opinion, there's a long stretch between what our courts are doing with accelerated rehabilitation and putting someone in jail. There's this wide, area in between where other things could be done to maybe ensure that they learn, or that at least they have a lasting criminal record so that others could see what they've done, and maybe prevent them from adopting, or just being able to learn that they have committed cruelty to animals. And we're not using anything in between. So
Yeah.
I'm very concerned about that.
And let me just add real quickly before Phil responds. I can just tell you from a news perspective that here in Connecticut, at least, the prisons have been largely depopulated by Governor Lamont. It started happening during COVID. They let a lot of people out, and it's to the point now where the prison population, I believe, is the lowest it's possibly ever been, to the point where they're closing some prisons down. So it's not like we don't have this space available here in Connecticut. But anyway, that's just a sort of a side note.
Thanks, Matt. No, and Linda, I'm not disagreeing with you. I would just say, again, need to look at the bigger perspective, bigger picture. This isn't just an animal welfare issue. That whole
Exactly.
the whole issue of AR affects the entire judicial system, the entire law enforcement. And so you need to understand, and I don't have the answers to it, but we need to understand why there's this push for AR. What's the social pressures behind it, where people are saying that, we can always help these, save these individuals and they can always be rehabilitated. Why aren't there, why is there the resources follow up, for the accountability, for the registry, criminal records, all of that? And that's certainly a discussion for, a much, much broader discussion, which involves, a lot of legal minds.
Do you have any suggestions for breaking the cycle of reoffending?
Well, and I wish I did. There have been a number of interventions that have been developed over the years for animal cruelty offenders. They have not been applied on any kind of consistent basis or frequently enough that we've been able to evaluate them to know whether they work. But it's also the same issue affecting any crime. How many times do we read in the newspaper, for those of us who still read newspapers, or wherever we get our news from, that somebody was, arrested and they checked, he had 5 prior offenses or whatever, he got off each time without anything. Why are so many people slipping through these cracks? We prevent people from reoffending. And I don't have an answer to that. Criminologists have been looking at this for many, many decades, and we still haven't come up with a good solution.
Do you think mandatory possession bans work?
They sound good
on paper, right?
Yeah. How do you enforce it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a problem.
You have the one animal control officer in a small town in Connecticut. Can you expect her to, once a month make a call to this particular address, hoping the guy will be there and the dog will be there? Or what happens if the guy leaves Groton and moves to Wilton, or moves from, gets lost in New Haven somewhere? Okay. So I mean, one of the things that every legislator has to deal with, well, there are several things they have to deal with. One is whether any law that anybody proposes is affordable, and they're maybe usually are price tags. Second is it enforceable? Are the systems in place? The third thing animal activists have to understand is that a legislator is literally faced with thousands of bills every session.
Right.
Connecticut isn't the worst. New York State probably is. I mean, right now, any legislator in Albany literally has over 10,000 bills.
Wow.
Not making that number up. They're not all going to.
Right.
We see animal welfare bills in particular, they keep getting reintroduced session after, hopefully they'll eventually, wear down. The Pause Act took 3 sessions, 6 years to get through Congress, and that was a short time. Legislators just are faced with all these issues, and every single one of these issues is being proposed, supported by people who are incredibly passionate about what the issue is. And most of them have some validity. I mean, a lot of them are garbage laws and garbage proposals, but a lot of them, are addressing serious social issues. Unfortunately, the animal issues are usually at the bottom of the priority pile, unless we can show that violence or child abuse or safety or an elder connection, in which case suddenly they say this is important. It also is extremely important to have a champion in the legislature. When Diana Urban was in the Connecticut, he was a gem there. We have a couple of people in New York State. We've had a couple of people in Massachusetts I can think of. We used to have one guy in Missouri, that we could always count on as, was the animal person. Okay. Most states don't have anything like that. And that's unfortunate. So, it's a case of reaching out to a legislator in advance and getting them on your side, recognizing, what they have to, or the hoops that they have to go to get any bill passed, and the realities of politics, and a governor who may or may not want incarceration, or may or may not want this, or may not want, okay, and whether, the liberals or the conservatives are in power at any given time. All that has to factor into it. Like I said, be patient.
Really patient.
Well, as a TV reporter, let me just ask you, because I want to go back to something that you said, Phil, that stuck with me about coercive control. When you're in that type of home environment, why is it that someone starts with the abuse of an animal? Is it about almost like a grooming situation, that the visual of abuse happening to someone else in the home rather than directly to you is almost more powerful?
No, it's actually something even simpler than that, Matt. The animals are soft targets. The essence of domestic violence or intimate partner violence is power and control. And the abuser, who's usually a man, but not always, we do have women who abuse men, and we have intimate partner violence in same-sex relationships. But the abuser has to establish dominance. It's, the alpha dog, mentality, if you will, has to show who he's in control. And he can do that through any number of ways. He controls the purse strings. He keeps the keys to the car. He keeps her under his thumb, and the kids as well. Okay. And he will do anything he can just to maintain control. Because overwhelmingly, the woman in the house who's the caregiver, because overwhelmingly pets are found in homes where there are children. Because overwhelmingly women and kids have more emotional attachment to their animals because of those responsibilities. The animal becomes a weak link. It becomes a point of vulnerability. It becomes a point where he can control by dominating that animal, by taking that animal away, by hurting the animal, by killing the animal, by threatening the animal. That sends a warning sign to her that she and the kids will be next. The animals become collateral damage. They become weaponized, if you will. And the abusers will use any means possible to, exploit a weak link that they find. And whether that means taking her phone or, taking her dog, that's what they're going to do.
Makes sense.
I mean, and when it comes to, it manifests in a lot of different ways. For example, he'll refuse to let her go to the doggy park. which has replaced the old Connecticut Village Green as the place where everybody gets together. He'll force her to watch pornography or to eat a dog food dish to humiliate. He'll take the animal away to mysteriously disappear one day, and that may be the only source of comfort that she had in the midst of all the chaos swirling around her. He'll refuse to let her take the animal to bed and then blame her when the animal gets, and then tell the kids it was all mommy's fault. He will refuse to allow her, if this winds up in a messy divorce, who's going to get custody of the animal? Because, like it or not, our pets are property, and they are treated as property in the same legal category as a toaster.
Mm-hmm.
But no abused woman ever ran back to the abuser because you know what happened to her toaster. But they stay. The national average right now takes at least 8 incidents before she can finally leave, because there are so many conflicting going on and so many crises. Okay, when animal cruelty is thrown into the mix, it can be as many as 50 prior incidents. That's how powerful a control issue this is.
Because you don't want to leave your pet behind.
Right. And consequently, we now have over 385 domestic violence shelters in this country that accept pets to make it easier for her to escape. That's the good news. The bad news, there's only one shelter in Connecticut.
Yeah.
We need more in Connecticut.
Right.
For some reason, when the pet-friendly shelter idea began, the New England states were the last ones to catch on. Don't know why.
And one of our initiatives is to pay for the first month's boarding for victims of domestic violence entering into a shelter so that their family member can remain safe. I'm sorry.
And I think that,
I just got an email yesterday from a group in Pittsburgh. It's called Harmony Pet Rescue.
Mm.
Check out their website. They provide, I think, either 30 or up to 90 days worth of care for fostering pets of domestic violence victims.
Nice.
Okay. Good example. I mean, there are lots of foster care programs around the country. They're as good an example as any.
Yeah, as someone who has luckily never experienced domestic violence, this is also shocking to me, and I'm wondering if much of our education should focus on the signs of domestic violence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your local domestic violence agencies and shelters, the Connecticut Coalition of Domestic Violence, they've got all sorts of materials. It's widely available, but that training is not regularly going out to the animal control officers. It's not regularly going out to other people in human services fields. The link brings those agencies together. It connects them. It gets the dialogue going between the agencies. And it's a challenge in Connecticut where, like I said, you've got 200 some odd towns, each with its own system. And I use the word system somewhat loosely. But again, getting the word out to them, and similarly, let the domestic violence agencies know what's involved with animal cruelty.
Right.
Okay. And Connecticut is doing as good a job as anybody in making this happen between the cross-reporting between the Department of Agriculture's animal control officers and, DCF on the human services side. But even there, I mean, it's somewhat haphazard. It isn't completely consistent across the entire state.
So what states are doing the best? I mean, if you could kind of pick and choose and make the perfect animal welfare and legislation.
The best example I have found is Delaware, which, for one simple reason, it's small.
Yeah.
Even smaller than Connecticut. Okay. You've got 6 counties. Delaware's only got 3. And all the animal control officers are housed under the Department of Animal Welfare. It's under the health department. So there's a state agency controlling the entire state insofar as animal protection is concerned. So they're all on the same page, and it's on a county level. It's not on a township level. Will we ever see that in Massachusetts or Connecticut or Maine's got 600 animal control officers in different townships in New Jersey? Probably not. Okay. I mean, just the township fiefdoms established, in the Northeast over 300 years are too deeply entrenched. And it's not just animal welfare issues. I can, share with you frustrations living in New Jersey for 20 some odd years. Well, I was in Camden County outside of Philadelphia. We had there are 630 school districts in New Jersey. Not all the school districts have schools in them.
Mhm.
Okay. But there's a school district, even though there are no schools. Okay. In Camden County, we had 38 townships. Not all of them subscribed to the 911 police emergency system because people couldn't imagine, why would I call across a township line to call for a police officer? I mean, it's just so deeply entrenched that everything is provincial. You have to overcome that system before you can even begin to think about coordinating, collaborating animal protection work. Many states have county animal control agencies as opposed to,
Right.
done it all on the township level, some of them a mixture of both. If you want to see how frustrating it is, go to our website, nationallinkcoalition.org, and you'll see our national directory of abuse investigation agency. It's 51 pages on our website. Okay. We finally got veterinarians to accept the fact that, gee, maybe we ought to report animal cruelty, but they honestly didn't know who to call.
Oh, wow.
They did not know who to call. So we spent 7 months, and I'm not making this up, compiling the only national directory. We have 6,500 cities and counties in there on a state by state, county by county, city by city basis of who to call to report child abuse, domestic violence, elder abuse, and animal cruelty. And it is absolutely bizarre. There's one number to call for child abuse. There's one number to call for domestic violence. There's 1 or 2 numbers for elder abuse, and there can be 600 numbers for animal cruelty in some states.
Right.
And I mean, California can be the worst. It depends on what your zip code is in some areas in the same town as to, which agency, you want to call. And then just the fact that you know who to call doesn't necessarily mean they're empowered or interested in enforcing it. And in most parts of the country, at least half the jurisdictions in this country, it defaults to the police or the sheriff, and it's not a priority for them because it's only an animal.
Mhm.
Right. Because they haven't been educated on the link.
Yeah. And we're making progress. We're getting it there, but it's a slow process and there's constant turnover.
Yeah.
And I'm not singling law enforcement out or human services or child protection or veterinarians or prosecutors or any of these groups. It's just a long, slow process.
Yeah. But it's amazing when you do see the light bulb go on, isn't it?
It is indeed. And it's encouraging. It's inspiring to see it happen.
Do you feel you've had success in getting that knowledge out there by using one particular method?
I don't know if there's any one method that works any better than others. It's a combination of putting the news out, of doing the trainings, of personal connections, of one-on-one, of turning the light bulb on in somebody's mind and then setting them forth to do it. No different than Desmond's Army. It usually takes a spectacular incident and the media come in and make a case out of it and people start taking notice. I call it the Italian kitchen philosophy of advocacy. You throw enough spaghetti on the wall and something's going to stick.
Phil, do you need to go? I just want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, I really need to cut out of here, but this has been a real pleasure. I'd love to talk to you again. I really like what Desmond's Army is doing. Just, you said, Zilla, thank you for sending me the report of, what's been going on here in the last few years in very impressive numbers. And again, it takes, takes a village to raise a child. It takes just a couple of people to make things happen.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. My
Yes,
pleasure.
thank you so much. It was such an honor to meet with you and talk with you and learn from you.
Well, I get inspired when I see people like you down there in the trenches doing the actual work.
Thanks, Phil. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Okay, take care.
All right. Well, that was a That was a heavy but important conversation.
It
It's
really
tough to hear all
was.
those statistics. And actually, Zilla, I don't know how much, how comfortable you are sharing. I know, we've talked about it before and it's been in news reports, but this is deeply, deeply personal for you.
Personal. Yes.
And maybe we should tell people why who don't know.
Because I am a survivor of domestic violence. And unfortunately, 40 or so years ago, my dog wasn't. And I left. And as Phil mentioned, it takes 8, 15 times, however many times it takes. It's never the first time. It's never easy. It's very difficult to get out. And so when you have an opportunity, you take it. And on that particular day, my abuser had my dog. But I had a child to get out of there too, a toddler. And so I took that opportunity and I made arrangements to go back and get my dog. And it was way too easy. It was just way too easy. And I went and my dog was found. I found him shot dead on the front step, point blank in the chest.
And when Zilla, when you use the word survivor, that's a very purposeful choice of word, right? And I think it's important we say that rather than victim.
I'm not a victim. I am not a victim. I'm a survivor. My dog was a victim.
We really need to educate.
Yes. The courts really need to acknowledge the very real link between animal cruelty and domestic violence and social violence.
And part of it, I think, is exactly what Phil said. I mean, they're dealing with so many cases and there's always a backlog, and animal cases are always put at the back of the line. In a lot of ways, these court cases are viewed as numbers and a data point. But there are stories like yours, Zilla, and faces and names, behind the scenes of all of these abusers. And that's important. Like I remember, we're not talking about domestic violence or animal abuse now, but my son has autism and we just had a special education PPT for him at my school. And the first thing I did was show everyone a picture of him because I wanted his face to be associated with that conversation because he wasn't allowed to be there in person. So I think it's important that we just don't look at these things as numbers and data points, but people and stories.
I agree. And this really has my mind racing as far as, this is an area that I think would be impactful for legislators and our whole judicial system to see and get a better grasp on and better understanding. And what type of education can we do to get that story out there? Is it, conferences with survivors speaking? Is it conferences or meetings or whatever where we're bringing in both a survivor and their animal that was abused, putting names to these stories, putting faces to these stories, I think might be impactful.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, we probably have one of the greatest speakers on the subject right here.
Yeah. You can have your attorneys, talk about read from a warrant, right?
Yeah.
And there's a narrative that's associated with that, but there's nothing quite like the impact statements
right.
that are
Right.
read from the people who it impacted and affected the
Mhm.
most. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so glad that we had Phil Arkow on. Education for me. And I'm pretty educated. So I know that there's a lot of people out there who just don't have a clue. And I think this is so important to get it out there.
Yeah.
It's vital. it's vital to get it out there.
Absolutely vital.
And for anyone who wants to learn more about this, not only can you go to Phil's website, but obviously we have a lot of information about the link on our desmondsarmy.org website. And we just published a big data study, which we're working on getting some exposure for. And I don't know if you want to, share a little bit about that, but it's quite, and was it like 88, 90 pages, something like
Yeah.
that?
88. Yeah. It is. We saw a report come out. Matt, you're going to have to help me with the name of the agency that put that out. Department of
Yeah,
Safety.
DESPP,
Yes.
Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection.
Yes. So they put out a report in this year. That report came out, but it covered a period at the end of 2023, and it compared it to the same period months during 2024. And it said that in 2024, we had a 37.6% increase in animal cruelty crimes. And I was curious to know how accurate that was. So we started really taking a deep dive into we've kept our data on all of the cases that we follow over the years. It may not be as complete as we'd like it to be as far as descriptions of the crimes that were committed, but we have them. And so we really busted into our database and recorded all of those cases and compared year over year. And what we're finding is that, yes, their numbers were in fact probably higher than what we have for that year. But animal cruelty continues to rise.
Mm-hmm.
Over and over again. And 2025 is certainly no exception. In fact, I think it's it's skyrocketing, the animal cruelty cases. And
The rate is alarming,
it really is.
the increase.
But what our report revealed was that not only is there this massive increase in animal cruelty crimes, but there's a massive decrease in accountability.
Right.
Yes.
We just are not seeing accountability really on most levels. Serious, very serious crimes, the defendant is being granted, and it is granted, some type of a diversionary program where there is really nothing, as I said, talking with Phil, that there's really nothing that they have to do. So they just sit back and say, oh, well, I committed animal cruelty, and in 6 months or a year, nobody will ever know. Nobody will ever be able to find out because my record will be expunged. And they can go on to the next. And we saw this in the Ray Newberger case. He abused his girlfriend's dogs and he was granted AR.
He abused his girlfriends, both of them, severely, and used it was the two dogs initially. And then the next girlfriend, he abused her cats.
And again, there was
killed.
no accountability, and there was no way for anyone to know, any new girlfriend coming along, that, one of the signs that I really need to be on the lookout for is animal abuse. And he killed her cats. I mean, it just goes on and on. So the lack of accountability and the lack of being able to record the history of animal abuse, I think is that's what our report revealed, is that there's very little accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, we're really doing an injustice to.
Yeah, it's shocking. And it's also doesn't help when the narrative from the state is the total opposite. Crime is down.
Yeah.
Because there's a different kind of crime and it's not down.
Right. It really, and, we sit in court all the time. That's what our group does. And, we don't go in and just listen to the animal cruelty cases. We listen to all the cases, and to see some of the crimes that go through our judicial system that aren't being, really given a serious look. Drug abuse, DUIs, even sexual assaults are just pushed off to the side.
Well, crime is not down, but the numbers are down because of the lack of accountability. And, they're given AR, they're nollying, and that is in order to get their
Yes.
numbers down. So it's a facade.
Yeah. Yes. And, so when somebody's given accelerated rehabilitation for 1 year and a year and 2 days later, they look at the numbers, that number doesn't show up. So it just shows that, there was no crime. So
And a
the
perfect
AR,
example,
it's an injustice as far as I'm concerned.
yeah. And a perfect example, I mean, we just saw it with a case that we've been following about a dog named Bambi, right? I mean,
Yes.
this was a dog that was puppy, I think 3-4 months old, and starved nearly to death. And there was absolutely zero accountability. First, we were denied access to the warrant. We had to put in a FOIA request. Finally, we were able to get it. And it revealed, I don't know, a pretty airtight case, I think, with the
Video.
suspect. I mean, there was video evidence.
There was video, and it wasn't about, and here again, it wasn't about the law enforcement and doing their
Right.
job. They
Right.
did their job. It went to the courts, the warrant went to the courts, and they refused to sign off on it. And it was a clear, intentional case of starvation. There was nothing wrong with that puppy.
Wow.
Yep.
And we see this more and more frequently. I mean, sometimes we just have to shut it off and say, I just can't look at this anymore. And we back off, some for, a couple of days, some for a couple of weeks. We always end up back here, but it's just so overwhelming to know what's really out there. The harm that people are doing to other people, to animals, that
Right.
just goes unnoticed.
Yes.
Well, they talk about, right, we've all heard the term the wheels of justice.
Yeah.
And if those wheels aren't greased or there's one cog in the wheel, then it's a whole different ball game. Like, if you can have a police department that does its job, and in the case of Bambi, it looks like they did. There was an investigation that was done. They recommended that, there would be a charge of animal cruelty, and it was the prosecutor, the Milford State's Attorney's Office in that case, that dropped the ball. So everyone has to work as a team in order to bring justice and accountability.
Imagine how frustrating that must be for our animal control officers and law enforcement to do their job, do it well, and then just have it brushed off. I recently went to Zilla, help me out, the Association of Prosecuting Attorneys for Animal Cruelty nationwide. They held that conference in Pittsburgh. And so it was animal control officers, veterinarians, law enforcement, prosecutors. There was a judge there. There was just this whole variety of people, animal advocates, not from Connecticut, of course. And they all told their stories, and, it was a teaching conference to teach other states where they're having success. And I came out of there with the one thought in mind, is that, all of these states that are having greater success than we are collaborative. They work together. Veterinarians talk to the prosecutors. They talk to law enforcement. Their prosecutors talk to advocates. They're
Advocates. Yeah.
It's just, they all work together and get the job done. And I don't think that I'm blind, but I don't see that in Connecticut whatsoever. I think everybody is so proprietary over their own information that they don't want to share with the next person, with DCF, with, whoever it may be. They're just so closed off. It's a real eye opener going to the conference.
No, Linda, you're absolutely right. I mean, I remember being in news, and They had to create their juvenile crime. There was a huge spike in juvenile crime, specifically related to like car thefts. And so they had to create a regional juvenile crime task force, multiple agencies, just so they could all get on the same page. And again, that sharing of information, one agency to the next, And that doesn't happen with animal related crime. And maybe it should, because we've all played the game telephone, right? Where it starts off one way, but then it gets translated and ends up a totally different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
We,
information
we
gets
have
lost.
definite areas in Connecticut where we could do better. We just have to get us there somehow.
Yeah.
All right.
And it seems people don't want to be educated. That's a problem. That's a problem.
So just real quickly, Matt, I'm seeing that you want us to end here, but we took our report we started with the governor. The governor sent us to his policy director. Policy director sent us somewhere else. We ended up in Judicial, and I was saying to them, like, here's this conference that goes on every year, and Connecticut there's never been a prosecutor, a veterinarian, law enforcement.
No.
There's never been a Connecticut-based person to attend this. We need education. And I was told we have education. They're educated. In fact, this year we have an elective course on Desmond's Law. It's like you have an elective course. Desmond's Law has been in effect for nearly 10 years. 10 years?
Almost.
And just this year, we ran into a judge who said, what's
Desmond's Law?
What is it?
Wow.
They don't know. They're not willing. An elective course on a law. Somewhere the connection is not being made.
There's a serious disconnect.
Yes. So that's, it's just a big concern. And, in whatever areas I look, maybe I'm passionate about, I look for education, and not seeing that from many of the professions that have to do with crime.
I mean, I had the same takeaway when I went last year.
It was so
to
inspiring.
The conference in Richmond. It was amazing to see how everyone worked together, and the connections, the networking.
The networking, yeah.
And how other states network with other states.
Right. Work together to find a better way to accomplish what they want to accomplish. Why would you do a job if you don't want to, obtain the positive end goal?
And it's all for the greater good.
Right.
So why wouldn't you want to?
Yeah. Kind of discouraging.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yep. Sets us on a path.
Yeah. Well, this was a really eye-opening conversation. Episode 2, I would say, is a success. It's and we're on to episode 3. We already have ideas, right? The wheels are turning. And hey, we got to plug the purple plunge. Who wants to do that real quick?
Oh, go ahead, Linda.
You want me to do that? Okay, the purple plunge. This is so that she can call me the chicken. If I won't plunge, I have to talk, I guess.
I'm in the dark over here.
Yeah.
So the purple plunge, we do this every year. This is our 5th annual, where we ask some brave people in Desmond's Army and outside of Desmond's Army, and we have a great group, to compete to raise funds for Desmond's Army, and compete to go jump in the icy waters of Soundview Beach on January 13th. I can't even stand the thought of it. And it's so funny how competitive they are. We have people from rescues. We have animal control officers. We have Connecticut Humane Society, all competing against each other. And we raise quite a bit of money. We have such fun.
It's a great time.
I'm the workhorse. I am not the great one. Just put me in the background there.
Well, I
My
have volunteers to roll me down to the water like a Tootsie Roll if I can make it down on 2 legs.
Oh, that's right. Zilla hurt her ankle recently.
Yes.
Yeah.
My
yeah.
knee.
So
your
if
knee.
anyone,
I broke my leg.
yes, if anyone out there, look, ice, they say ice is good for stuff like that.
Right? Inflammation. Salt water and ice for inflammation.
So if anyone is interested in joining our brave plungers, you can become a plunger. You can register on our website or on our Facebook page. And if you're like me, a big chicken, and you don't want to go in the water, you can also participate by voting for your favorite plunger. It's so funny. The prize is a purple plunger, but so you can vote. You can find out how to vote on our website or on our Facebook page.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Well, we want to thank our guest, Phil Arkow, and we want to thank you, Zilla, and you, Linda, for hosting this podcast today. Absolutely. And just a reminder to everybody, you can find these podcasts in full, every single episode, on our Facebook page, on our Instagram page, on YouTube, as well as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So thank you so much for tuning in for episode 2, and we will see you all next time. Thanks.